Will Jack grow up in The Incredibles 3? Will the entire Parr family age in this third movie? And what about Syndrome? Will he appear in this third film? Or did he really die at the end of The Incredibles? The truth is, The Incredibles 3 is happening. Pixar has already confirmed it. Let's go back to talking about D23, the event that took place in the United States where Disney revealed many new things. We're going to talk about Disney and Pixar because there was a lot of news. By the way, I already made a video about Toy Story 5. If you haven't watched it, the idea for this film is brilliant, much better than the fourth one. So, after this video ends, click on the other one, okay? It all happened when Pete Docter announced that The Incredibles 3 was happening. This was back at D23, and Pete Docter, in case you don't know, is the head of Pixar, but he's also the director of Monsters Incorporated and Inside Out. This already carries a lot of weight because besides announcing this sequel, he announced that Brad Bird is coming back. He was a bit away from Pixar, but now he's back. And this guy, no less, directed Ratatouille, The Incredibles, and The Incredibles 2. I'm super excited because bringing Brad Bird back means that Pixar wants this film to be the best it can be. Bringing back the director of the first and second movies is brilliant. It's exactly what we want. Because what often happens, especially in Hollywood, is that the first film has one director, the second film has the same director, but by the third film, sometimes the director changes, and the movie ends up being worse at the box office than the other two. The story may be good, but sometimes the new director can't do as good a job as the original one. This has caused a lot of controversy, and everyone already knows about it. It has happened in other cases, where the director makes the first film, then they ask him back for the sequel, but the studio brings in another director for the third movie. This creates confusion because it strays from the original vision. Brad Bird practically created The Incredibles, so he's the best person to understand the franchise, and he's back, which is amazing. It's incredibly awesome, just like your like on this video, which is free and only takes 2 seconds. Now, the question is, did we really need The Incredibles 3? We already have Inside Out 2, Toy Story 5, Cars 3. Isn't that enough? Wasn't it fine with just 2 films? I'm going to defend this and give my opinion. For me, The Incredibles 3 is super necessary. First, we already waited 14 years between the first and second films. Great! By the time they release the third one, we'll have waited at least another 10 years since the release of the second movie. But okay, the thing is, Pixar realized something they had overlooked. They said they weren't going to make any more sequels, that usual talk. But what happened? They simply made Inside Out 2, which has already grossed over $1.6 billion just at the box office. Not to mention the products. I'm not even talking about toys, notebooks, backpacks, just the movie tickets, which are almost reaching $2 billion. And it's the highest grossing animated film in cinema history. So Pixar thought, a sequel that surpassed the original and is still the biggest of all? Let's make more! Besides, The Incredibles 2 also had tremendous box office success. Inside Out 2 just broke the record set by The Incredibles 2, so it's one success after another, and they're going to make more. Now, beyond the box office, let's talk about the fiction itself, about the narrative of the Incredibles franchise. To me, of all Pixar movies, The Incredibles is the one with the most potential for exploration because it's about a family of superheroes. With superheroes, you can create countless stories. Marvel is proof of that. Look at how many Avengers movies there have been, and how many other Marvel films exist. Another example is James Bond and Mission Impossible, which are endless stories. It's about a guy who goes after suspense, uncovers things, fights villains. These are stories that can continue for many years because they don't get old. They can adapt and extend more and more. So, Mission Impossible, Fast and Furious, James Bond, they all follow this path. And it's somewhat what happens with The Incredibles. To me, The Incredibles has more potential for more movies than even Toy Story. And Toy Story already has 4 films and is heading for a 5th. Will The Incredibles stop at the second? No, it won't. Pixar can create a story for the third film. By the way, what do you think will happen in The Incredibles 3? Leave your opinion in the comments. It's super important. And remember, The Incredibles will be Pixar's third franchise to have at least 3 films. The only others so far are Toy Story and Cars. Toy Story is heading for the 5th. Cars stopped at the 3rd so far, and The Incredibles will get its 3rd. So, these are the only 3 franchises with at least 3 films, which is no small thing. Before talking about Syndrome, whether he returns or not, I'd love to see a spin-off of The Incredibles. I think a lot of people know what I'm going to say now. Many people have been asking Pixar for a Frozone spin-off. If anyone deserves a spin-off from The Incredibles, it's Frozone. There's so much that can be explored about his life. In the second film, he gained a bit more spotlight, but there's still so much more that can be expanded on in Frozone's universe, showing various other things we didn't see in the first 2 movies, and even exploring what he did before and what he'll do next. Everyone would watch a Frozone movie, I'm sure. You could even think of Frozone 1 and Frozone 2. Puss in Boots is an example of this, right? Look at the success it made. It already has 2 movies, and I believe Puss in Boots will still get a 3rd. But see, it's a spin-off of a classic film. Puss in Boots has appeared in more movies than Shrek himself. That's the level and power of a spin-off. Another successful spin-off is Minions, and I don't even need to say more. Alright, the plot of The Incredibles 3 hasn't been revealed yet. We don't know what's going to happen or how it will happen. And I see a lot of people talking about the timeline of The Incredibles. Will they grow up? A lot of people want the characters to age, others don't. Now, my opinion, personally, I don't want the characters to age. But why? Because for me, we've already seen 2 movies with the Parr family the way we know them. The second film takes place on the same day as the end of the first, with only minutes apart. I like the characters as they are. And besides, the fun of Jack Jack is that he's a baby, let's be honest. Because if he grows up, the focus will shift to him. Dash and Violet may become adults, which could lead to the retirement of Elastigirl and Mr. Incredible, and even Frozone. Man, I don't want to see that. I want to see them in action, Mr. Incredible, Elastigirl, and Frozone together again. Besides all that, there's the commercial aspect. Everyone knows that babies in movies, especially in animations, are a hit. The audience loves it, and toys sell like hotcakes. If Jack Jack remains a baby, Pixar will sell many more toys than if he were a teenager. We like baby Jack Jack. I know many people would like to see him grow up and all, but that would only work if Pixar had proposed that since the second movie. In other words, the first film as we know it, the second with the whole cast a little older, and the third with the cast even older. That would build a timeline in the franchise where the characters age, like in How to Train Your Dragon, where Hiccup grows up with each film. Another example is Inside Out, where Riley grows up from the first to the second. The only case where I think aging worked from the second to the third movie with a big time jump was Toy Story, because the concept was very good. And Andy isn't the protagonist, he's not part of the main cast. He's crucial to the story, but the protagonists are the toys. So, the fact that Andy grew up didn't affect the story much because the toys remain toys. Now, if you make Jack Jack 15 years old, for example, you're going to mess with everyone. Violet, Dash, Elastigirl, everyone will age. And I don't think that will work, especially for commercial reasons. I'd like them to stay as they are, but for commercial reasons, I think they'll keep them that way too. Now, if the idea of aging is really good, then we'll accept it, as we did with Toy Story. But it has to be really good. About Syndrome, he's a classic Pixar villain. At the end of the first film, he explodes in the plane's propeller. But did he really die? I think Pixar killed him off there. But if they decide to bring Syndrome back, I think it will be a hit, because everyone loves Syndrome. As I've already mentioned here, bringing nostalgic characters back to the present works if done right. If they want to bring Syndrome back, they'll come up with an excuse. But nothing has been confirmed. Pixar hasn't said anything about it. If there's another villain, that would be great too. The Incredibles has a line of epic comic books with various villains. Maybe they'll pick one of those villains for the third film. But to me, Syndrome is still the best villain in The Incredibles. I didn't like the villain in The Incredibles 2 very much. I thought the idea was cool, but compared to Syndrome, he's much more cruel, epic, iconic, and charismatic, just the way we like it. So, to surpass Syndrome, it has to be really good. There's still no release date for The Incredibles 3, but I believe it will be around 2027 or 2028. Comment below how old you'll be in 2027 or 2028. I want to know, okay? Now, what we do know is the release date for Toy Story 5 and Zootopia 2, and those two movies are going to be epic. I made 2 videos explaining what's going to happen. The idea for Toy Story 5 is pretty cool, and Zootopia 2 as well. Click there. Thank you so much for watching this video. Until the next video here on Cine Lovers.